For some of you, it was a single market commissioner, but it's historic for CEPS because we have a first chairwoman of our board in the 40 years of CEPS. And that's also one of the reasons why we wanted to organize this debate, but on a subject which is not, of course, we shouldn't involve you in internal management for an open debate, but I think we have a perfect panel to speak on one of the things which we as a organization have been very active, which is enlargement. I see Michael Emerson just coming in, one of the persons who was leading the work on enlargement in CEPS, because we as an organization, and we do this debate in the context of our 40 years, have basically from the early 90s, since the wall came down, been very active in the whole debate about the enlargement of the European Union in this process, I think from the mid-90s, second half of the 90s, about approximation of laws with possible new member states, but also not only the current new member states or the states today from Central and Eastern Europe, but also the Western Balkans, which are still waiting to become members. And for example, Michael was very active in a network which we created at the time. It was the Western Balkans Monitor, which was very widely read at the time, let's say, which we organized mostly through email. But then, of course, the whole debate now about Moldova and Ukraine and also Georgia is also something which we as an organization have been working on a long time. We've been working on what we call the DCFTA project, the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Agreements, and an analysis of these special agreements which exist between the EU and these three countries, and what the potential was for membership of these countries, which of course, as we know, has accelerated in the last 18, 19 months now in a different process because of this horrible war which we have in Ukraine. But this is an introduction for what I think will be a very interesting panel, because we have Tina, who will be moderating this panel now with our previous chair of the board, Joaquin Almunia, whom also I would like to thank on behalf of CEPS for his, I think, 7 years as chair of the board. And then, of course, welcoming our new chair of the board. But then on a discussion on a theme, which you see, on enlargement. So 3 persons, we can have their perspectives on enlargement. I think we were not so much involved in the Spanish and the Portuguese enlargement because we didn't exist so much as an organization. But that's something Joaquin, from his perspective, can dwell on. And then we have Ella, and then we have a person from the Western Balkans, let's say, which is fantastic that we can have you as well, Anita, to speak on that issue. So 3 different perspectives on enlargement, moderated by Tina, who's also very much in CEPS leading debates on these matters. So Tina, I pass you the floor, and thank you for your interest, and I hope, let's say, we'll have an interesting debate.
Thank you very much, Carl, for this great introduction. Indeed, we are celebrating 40th anniversary of CEPS, so this event is the part of the series, the events, and today we will discuss enlargement and all the existential questions we may have about it, around it, and all the existential questions EU policymakers have about it. So now to have a countdown to the publication of the European Commission's reports just in 5 days on the November 8th. So we decided it would be good to come together today to reflect on the past and then to contemplate how we would like to see the future and how the future for the European Union should look like. So I'm sure our great speakers have a lot to say, but as the moderator, I will make sure to reserve the last half an hour for the Q&A. And I'm very happy to see the full room in the holiday week in Brussels. So stay with us till the end of the event. Also, we will record today's event and it will be uploaded on the CEPS YouTube channel if you may need to rewatch it later. Without further ado, as Carl already mentioned, I mean, we know Joachim as being, former vice president of the European Commission and commissioner before then, but if we go 40 years back in time, and the 40 years is our today's marker for CEPS, you've been the Minister of Employment and Social Affairs in times Spain was negotiating to become part of the back then European community. Can you just, walk us back in time? What was challenging there, and how is this still relevant, whether it is still relevant today?
Okay, thank you very much, Tina. Thank you very much to Karel and to CEPS for inviting me, even if I am no more the chairman of the board. And I'm very happy to share this panel with my successor. Elżbieta Bienkowska. I hope I pronounce more or less well her name. And thank you very much for allowing me to remember what I was doing 40 years ago. Spain was a very pro-European country, still is. But at that time, Spain looked at the then European community as a paradise of freedoms, democracy, economic progress, welfare, social welfare. And we wanted to join the European community. Since the first day, we became a democratic country with the first democratic elections in June '77. Before, during the awful times of the Franco's regime, the dictatorship, we were the Democrats, pro-Europeans, but we didn't want Spain to become member of the European community before Spain was not a fully fledged democracy. So first consideration to join today's European Union, you need to be a democracy to fulfill the Copenhagen criteria from the point of view of the existence of a real rule of law, democratic institutions, separation of powers, freedoms, protection of human rights. This is of the essence. So enlargement cannot be understood with this precondition of becoming a democracy. I know how difficult it is. I remember those days in my own country and in other European countries, how difficult are the transitions, but the transitions are a necessary process if you don't have, since the first minute, you are considered candidate, a fully fledged democracy. First, to learn how to become a democracy and to protect the democratic institutions and the democratic rules of freedoms and so on and so forth. So this brings me to the second point. You need to be prepared, not only from the democratic point of view, you need to be as prepared as possible from the economic point of view. So you need an economy that will be able not only to survive, but to succeed within the single market. And the single market, even if it's not yet completed, is a very serious condition because you need to be able to make sure that free movement of goods, services, persons, and capitals, even the capital freedom is not yet completed, is a real opportunity for you, not a real risk. So how to prepare your country to become member of the Union? You need to respect the rules of the club. You cannot modify it from outside the rules of the European Union. The European Union as a club will tell you, you have to respect my rules. So the preparation is not only the fact to negotiate the chapters, of being successfully closing the chapters, to approach your membership, but you need to have a real program of internal reforms. And it's needed a real ownership of your government, of your parliament, of your institutions, and your public opinion and your civil society, real ownership to accelerate as much as possible the fulfillment of the conditions for the success of the accession. This requires, of course, support. And this enlargement, the coming enlargement, as it was the case in the enlargement in 2004, 2007, 2012-13 for Croatia, requires pre-accession support. At that time, in the case of Spain, we didn't have this pre-accession support from the financial point of view. we were obliged to get financial support from the credibility of our market economy, of the functioning of our economy, from the functioning of our political institutions to attract foreign direct investments. But now we learn that pre-accession is required from the point of view of the financial support of the EU to the future members of the EU. But you need more things, and I will come to an end of this first intervention. You need to learn how the EU functions. So it's very important to visit Brussels, Strasbourg, Luxembourg, but let's be in a synthesis, to visit Brussels, to learn what happens here in Brussels, to learn what means to be a member of the EU from the point of view of the role of the European Commission, of the responsibilities of the European Commission, to learn who are sitting in the seats of the European Parliament, the MPs, that are much more important now than they were 45 or 46 years ago when we were negotiating. You need to prepare your officials, your public officials, and the leaders in the economic sectors, the social sectors, to prepare those leaders to interact with the European institutions before you become a member. So the day you become a full member of the European Union, you need to be aware where are you going to work, where are you going to decide, where are you going to negotiate once you become a member. And the last thing that I will say of my previous life as minister negotiating, you need to be tough in the negotiations, being able to explain clearly what are not only your interests, your priorities, but also your problems, and to make sure that the guys who negotiate from the EU side are aware of your problems, and they are taking into account your difficulties, the obstacles of the transition, the obstacles for achieving a preparation, not to be obliged, once you are in, to restart a negotiation once you become a member of the EU. Because in this case, if you become a member of the EU before you were fully prepared, you will have difficulties afterwards to decide, to discuss and decide at the EU level what is good, not only for the general interest of Europe, but also for the interest of your country, trying to align your country priorities with the priorities of the EU. But this makes very difficult this process before the entry and, of course, also after the entry. I think these are my first comments regarding my experience 40 years ago.
Yeah, this is very useful because I remember Copenhagen criteria, as we know, it comes from 1993. So what you described, Joachim, I think perfectly fits in, and I think gives us some definition what Copenhagen
I describe
criteria means,
my
right?
souvenir of 84, 85.
10 years before we made the Copenhagen criteria, and I think we still we don't have a proper interpretation of it. So I think that offers it. That was definitely democracy, economic, administrative capacity, which you mentioned. And at the end, what you added, this is, I don't know, I just want to frame it so that we have a takeaway today, is transparent communication with the EU and strategic communication, right? Talking about problems.
Well, building trust.
Building trust.
When I remember when I visited as a minister of Labor and Social Security here for the first time, a commissioner. The commissioner was Peter Sutherland, fantastic pro-European, that was at that time in charge of competition policy. I didn't negotiate competition policy with Peter at that time, but he was also in charge of labor and social affairs. That was a second portfolio that Jacques Delors gave to him, waiting for the arrival of Spaniards. So I tried to explain to him what were our demands, free movement of labor since day number one and so on, but also which were our problems, our difficulties, for them to understand how to reach an agreement, but not only abiding by the rules of the club, but also taking into account that the new member of the club will arrive with the obligations to comply with those rules, but with difficulties because we were still, in economic terms, too young. So I think it's very good to have these personal contacts, these personal feelings to build trust before you sit for the first time at the College of Commissioners or in the European Parliament or in the Council, of course. I think it was important.
Thanks a lot. This is very insightful. Let's move forward within time. So we were 40 years back now, 20 years back.
2020 almost.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, indeed.
I mean, yes, it will.
Yeah.
Next year will be 20,
20
years.
indeed.
We are not anymore new member states.
No,
not
at all.
anymore.
I was going to mention it as the largest enlargement, right?
Yeah.
The EU had to the east, and obviously you come from Poland, and I thought it would be insightful if you could share with us the Polish experiences, as Joachim was saying. What were problems and challenges back then? What worked? What didn't work? And especially, I'm sure, I mean, in the audience we'll have people who draw parallels between Poland and Ukraine because these two countries have similar, economic, population size. They can relate. So, what could the countries learn from that?
First, I can sign under everything what was said by Joaquin Almunia. Thank you very much for that, because I think that education and learning are the most important words here. If you need to really comply the whole legislation and to conclude each and every chapter, you need to have good knowledge of the institutions. But this is the first thing. But the second thing is this direct knowledge of the people. This is extremely important. Of course, we are part. I think I can say on behalf of bigger bloc of the countries from the Central and Eastern Europe that joined EU in 2004. We were part of this Big Bang enlargement, and there were many concerns, especially among the old, so-called then old member states, how it will be, like now, like with Ukraine and the other aspirating countries. On our side, it was only enthusiasm. And I also see this enthusiasm now with the Ukraine. I will maybe make some remarks to current situation, because enthusiasm is not enough, of course. Enthusiasm will evaporate, and enthusiasm must be rewrite into plans, programs, and everything else. And that's what we are looking for, and we are waiting for the next week report of the Commission. That it will not be only report of the 10th new aspirating countries, but also a kind of at least general plan for the discussion, proposed for the discussion at the European Council in December. I was then, of course, I was then not working in the national administration at the national level, so I was not directly involved in the negotiations, but I was working at the regional level, and in the country size of Poland, like Spain, like where we have decentralized system. It also is very important to have this experience. I think I'm happy to have this experience, because I can say, and I can also make this parallel to the for example, Ukraine, and to this what we are now discussing called gradual enlargement and whatever. I think that, of course, we were entering EU because this I always underline, not for the money. We were entering EU because we felt that we are Europeans, we belong here, and we entered EU for the values, for the freedom, for democracy, for equality. But of course, I think, as I was working then mostly with regional policy, I was working from the mid-90s in a FARE program and then cohesion funds. I think that cohesion fund may be not so broadly, is known as a really wonderful and perfect training path, launch path for different European policies. As you are dealing with the cohesion programs, you are dealing with all of the European policies, all of them, with the competition, with the transport, now with the Green Deal, with the energy, except defense and foreign relations, all of the areas of European policies are financed by cohesion fund. So if you want to have a good value for money, first you need to prepare yourself for this single legal framework in the EU and negotiate the chapters, but then you need to have the big knowledge of the European policies and also knowledge of the people. Why I'm telling this? Because I think that in Poland, especially regional administration, which is of very good quality, I can say it after many years, was trained on cohesion fund. And this is something which can be repeated, if we're talking about this gradual accession, can be repeated in the new member states. That you are.
Sorry, could you tell us what was training into the cohesion policy? What do you mean by it, by training? So that we.
I mean, it's a training path. Of course, it's not like formal training. But if you want to prepare a good program, a good strategy, which can be discussed with the Commission, and being very strong in your arguments, confronting the representatives of the European Commission, you need to have a big knowledge of different European policies. And that's why I think that really in Poland, the quality of the regional administration grew up on the cohesion fund. That's from my perspective. Of course, maybe two words of a little bit more bitter. As I said, we've been in European Union, our part of Europe, for 20 years. We are still called new member states. And of course, there are different stages of this growing up to be a old member state or adult member state. But after the first, as I call it, honeymoon, then you find out, because I've heard a lot of concerns previously from the Western member states, that maybe there will be there was perception that there will be maybe change of the center of the power. From our perspective, there was nothing like this. I think that only last 2 years, almost 2 years, since the war in Ukraine, we feel ourselves as our opinion and our needs are really visible in the European Union. And I can give you 2 examples. One is heavyweight and one is less heavy. The first one, Nord Stream. How many years our part of Europe was repeating, don't do this. Don't agree on the Nord Stream pipeline. We were not heard for many years. Second thing, maybe much more lighter, but from my personal perspective, I was dealing with the public procurement in Poland and then in the Commission. And in public procurement, there is again, detailed things. There's always some criteria. And in our programs in Poland, during negotiations, we had always criteria of the lowest price. And then I looked at the programs and strategies, community support framework for different member states from our part of Europe, everywhere. In each of them, the most important criterion was lowest price. Why was it? In Poland, they were telling it's a commission. And the commission told me, no, we are not doing it. We do not have anything with this. I was observing this. This is not a good value for money. Sometimes it is stupid. It is not a value for money. So I did, because during the negotiations, all of the countries were pushed to have this lower criteria, because maybe if something happened, you will be able to excuse yourself or find, or maybe at the top of your head, you had our negotiator had that maybe corruption. So first, you need to build a good administration and good anti-corruption system. And then You need to have a strong negotiator who are able to really pursue the goals of the country or the regions, because in Poland the cohesion funds are partly decentralized. I'm using this example because I think this is a good example of how we can really prepare different level of administration, also the regional and local one, for the accession. And this is a good incentive, because then you see that you have something, you build something. This is something that is very important. And the third thing, you get this personal contact with the Commission, which is extremely important. Because as you know, one friend of mine who is an entrepreneur told me, you are standing in front of this huge building, you mean Berlaymont, you don't know what's going on. You don't have a clue. Where is the Europe? This is Europe, you know, with 20,000 people. You know, this is something we need to find this link. This is the constant and endless discussion how to bring Europe closer to the people, because people do not understand that what is happening here has a real impact on their lives. And I really wanted to underline that this semantics may be, again, small thing, but this is important for us. We are not newcomers. We've been 20 years and we fulfilled 20 years ago all of the criteria and we tick all of the boxes, which is needed. This is the must. And the new member states, or if there will be an enlargement behind this enthusiasm, the new member states must tick all of the boxes. But this how we are perceived in Brussels, for example, and in general in the European Union, is extremely important. This is this 20 years is a huge educational process, and also I think that our huge success of our part of Europe, huge economic success, is also not very much recognized here. We started with a 30% of the average. We are now around 60 or even more. In some bigger states, it's even more. So it's enormous success. And it must be recognized also that we did it on our own. Of course, there's a separate thing how populism and nationalism can arise in such situation. But I wanted to start with this, and I forgot, which is not very good. No. I wanted to start with this, that, you know, I'm almost 60. And for me, there are the most important dates in the history. 89, the 4th of June, first election, and then the 1st May of 2004. And now maybe the 3rd, 15th of October this year, but... So 3 important dates.
Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts with us. And I think finishing on the success of economic cooperation and what can economic growth really do, this is very good to bring our third guest from Kosovo, Anita, with us, who actually represents economic sector, banking sector from the Western Balkans. And I mean, I don't know how back in time I can go. Maybe let's go back in Thessaloniki, 2003. Back then, it was anticipated, maybe for now, Western Balkans would be the part of the EU. Well, we don't see that much, but maybe you can tell us, you know, how EU's presence there, how the common goal of, you know, being the member of the European Union, how this has picked up, how this has helped economic growth of the region.
Hello, I'm Anita. I'm coming from Slovenia, but I'm working now 5 years in Kosovo already as the CEO of the Raiffeisen Bank Kosovo. I also spent in banking time, if we say 20 years ago, when I left Slovenia, just before they joined the EU, actually after they joined the EU that year. So I don't have experience so much as working in Slovenia since we joined EU, but I have a bit of an insight how it was before. And I was already there working in a bank, a very young one. I'm still young, but yeah, I was young back then too.
Oh,
younger. And yeah, so I have a little bit of an insight in and outside in views because I also spent over 10 years in Vienna in our headquarters of Raiffeisen Bank. So working in the very matured Western, what you say, adult EU country. Of course, Slovenia I experienced before they joined the EU. And now I am in Kosovo since 5 years, and this is the country that inspires to be the EU candidate and the EU member in the future. So what I can give, and I'm a banker, I'm not a politician, so please excuse me for not being so political. What I have observed over the past 20 years, because I am in banking over the past 20 years, as I said, Slovenia, Vienna, I was a bit in China as well, but now in Kosovo. What I have observed in the region is that this EU inspiration or enthusiasm, as Elizabeth said, is there. They really inspire to become the members of the European Union. And this is for them, first of all, if I talk about Kosovo, it's a security inspiration, first, to be part of the big family. It is economic inspiration to do the business together. Kosovo is a very import country, so they import more than they export, and most of the trade goes with European Union. Same goes for all 6 West Balkan countries, and here we talk about Albania, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Bosnia, and Serbia. They are all heavily dependent on European Union trade. With European Union trade, it's 60 to 70% of exchange between these countries and European Union. There is also exchange with other parts of the world, like say China or Turkey. These are a little bit bigger economic participants in the region. Also, when we talk about Serbia, Russia, so they are small in terms of volumes. So European Union is really dominating, as I said, 60 to 70%. But since they are present in the region, we like to call West Balkan also that they are getting influenced by the Turkey, by China, by Russia. And this is maybe interesting when you talk politics, but it's also very interesting when you talk business, because I am in Kosovo, and the top 3 biggest banks are European-based banks, and then there are the Turkish banks. And we have to sit together, and we have a banking association, and we have to discuss the standards, which one we will adopt. And of course, because Kosovo is a country inspires to be part of European Union, we are pioneering for the EU standards. And why I'm saying this, because the whole region in this preparation to join the EU and this inspiration that they have, what we as the banks can do, we can bring in the EU standards, and we do so. And then if we travel 20 years back, because we are exactly this year celebrating 20 years anniversary of Raiffeisen Bank in Kosovo and in most of the region, because this is when the bank expanded in the West Balkans. So what we observed, the colleagues, they used to be, let's say, not so much connected part of the group. But these days, if you are banking in Kosovo or in Austria, you are being served on the same standards. So I don't know if one big European company, like Siemens or Shell, or what we are seeing, Spar Group or something, is banking in the region, they get same services they would be banking in Austria or Czech Republic or Romania or Hungary, and these are all the countries we are present in, and some others as well. So these standards translate through the border. And why it is important for the banking system to be in the region? Because we are really connecting businesses with European companies. We support investors to come to the region. We support them with all the trade transactions and investment transactions that they need to do in the region. And also they are bringing in their standards in the region. So it's very important that this inspiration of going into the European Union is very much alive, that it's very much supported by politicians and by businesses. As Mr. Joachim said at the beginning, you need an economic foundation to start to talk integration of the politics. You need shared values, as Elizabeth said. And this is also one of the things, the culture, the values. We are a bank, but one of the biggest programs for me as a CEO is also to run the values programs in the bank, to share the corporate culture, as we call it, yeah, which is culture which is adopted from the headquarters in Vienna. And then if you adopt the values and the culture in one organization, which is, by the way, the biggest and the market leader in the country and has a lot of employees, you are also then translating this to the customers and then the business practices. And then everything is connected. In the end, everything is connected. What you do as an employee translates to the customer experience, and then customers doing business with their customers, and you are bringing in European Union standards and culture and approaches. And it's very important that this relationship further intensify on political and economic level. And we are very much excited, but maybe we will talk future in the second round, also to connect West Balkans with the single payment system of European Union, of the euro payment system. And this would be really a breakthrough for the region. Now I'm still talking more as on a banking level, but this is also connecting other things. European Union has donated and granted and give a lot of loans. We talk here about over 30 billion investment program for the West Balkans. And these programs can be utilized through the banks. Usually, even if the governments are sourcing, there is always a cooperation how the money flows and how the money goes. And these programs are of various purpose. One of the key purpose these days is greening the area, like green transition, renewable energies. The other one is digitalization. We all talk about digitalizing economies and the governments. And also the third one, very big one, is the social welfare. How can we further improve the social welfare in these countries and bring them closer to the social welfare of the future?
Anita, you refer to the programs and projects within the economic investment plan for Western Balkans? Yeah, right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that was unless you want to add anything on that.
I would just like to add, just to close my introduction, this 20 years journey that you have started has made an enormous impact in the region. I could say my first time in Kosovo, it was 2008. I was on a business trip from Vienna, and seeing Pristina or Kosovo today in 2023 is an enormous improvement on the businesses, and also just to look around, yeah, you see much more buildings, developments, same in Albania. These two countries I visit more often, and I can really say, or Montenegro, you don't recognize it, yeah? After 20 years, you do not recognize it. It doesn't look the same. So much improvement, and thanks to the European Union support as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So we have not moved much into the enlargement, but at least we moved on the other areas, such as economic growth. That's good. I remember the very first speech in 2019, when we had the new commissioner, Verhelyi. I think the first speech he made, he said, if there is any gap between the EU and Western Balkans, the gap is economic growth. And I think he was right. So if we see some dynamics that way, that's at least some good news. And let me come back to Joachim to just contemplate, as I promised, about the future of the EU, because now we're talking about what candidate countries need to do to become the members, and we talked about it a lot, I think. But what should EU do itself to be ready for the next enlargement?
And you say you is the 27.
EU as the, yes, European Union of 27.
Well, a lot of things. Because if the EU will not be prepared to introduce substantial changes in the present EU, the EU we know it today, enlargement will not be possible. And if the EU is not able to succeed in the reforms, institutional reforms, decision-making procedures, a lot of things in many EU policies, the EU will have, the present EU, 27, will not only fail with enlargement, and the enlargement is a question of our own security, given the world we are living in, but the EU 27 will have serious internal problems because of the failure of the enlargement. So I think this enlargement is not only the future enlargement. This is not only about how to proceed with the negotiations with such different countries, among them and the group of them vis-à-vis the present members, or many of the present members, but this will also create very serious problems in the world, because Europe is absolutely needed to try to fix some of the serious problems that the world is having today. So the importance, the political importance, the political relevance of this enlargement is, in my view, much bigger for the whole Europe than the problems that we knew in the enlargements in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s. What to do? Well, first of all, to build trust among the member states of the 27, and of course, between the candidates and the present members. Trust. How to do this, how to build higher levels of trust is a huge political challenge, but it's absolutely needed in my view. Treaty reforms will be needed, are needed today with the 27, but today are impossible because nobody in the European Council will dare to open treaty reforms because the trust among the 27 is not strong enough, and the trust of some member states vis-à-vis the EU institutions, has been weakened for different reasons. So trust, political challenge, impressive. But the other impressive thing is that this new enlargement was committed with the Western Balkans countries, but the way is now revisited as a big initiative has to do with Ukraine, with the situation of Ukraine, with the war in Ukraine, with the invasion of Ukraine. And how to approach the procedures to negotiate with Ukraine if Ukraine is being invaded, is at war with serious problems, enormous problems. We need to imagine how to combine the support to Ukraine with, at the same time, helping Ukraine to launch a lot of reforms. At the same time, it's extremely difficult to approach gradually the conditions to become member of the EU. But the other members of the group of candidates probably will not be able to wait until the Ukraine serious problems, deep problems, will be fixed. So how to combine this group of new candidates, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, and the candidates since Thessaloniki that are waiting, how to combine this if we cannot imagine an enlargement process with everybody joining the EU at the same time. That I think will be not possible. How to structure this requires a lot of imagination and a lot of political will, and a lot of trust for those who have to wait more than others that can run faster and can become members of the EU faster.
Joachim, we had Prime Minister of Croatia this summer actually at CEPS, celebrating Croatia's 10th year anniversary of joining the EU. And I remember what Prime Minister said, if you want to join EU, then just go, with your own speed. So what he basically brought up the Croatia. So maybe this is the answer, that do we want to go on group, or do we want to go regatta, like separate merit-based? That's what you want to say?
Well, I was saying, yes, that the enlargement process must be based on merits, but we cannot judge the degree of accomplishment of merits the same way in, say, Serbia than in Ukraine. So we need to be able to diversify from the EU point of view the way we treat the situation of every candidate, but the merits to be accomplished by the different candidates are not of the same quality. Ukraine is a very particular issue. It is at the origin of this political initiative of the enlargement, the revisited idea of enlargement, cannot be treated the same way. The others cannot wait until the moment Ukraine will be well prepared, the end of the war, a good deal to eliminate or to overcome the extremely negative, difficult, painful consequences of the war for Ukrainians. This will require a lot of imagination, a lot of innovation, and at the same time, at the EU level, the EU should start discussing reforms in the common agricultural policy, in the cohesion policy, in the budget, in the decision-making process, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, the EU cannot stop the process to fix the present problems of the 27 as the EU members, to the completion of the single market, capital market union, banking union, the completion of the economic and monetary union, etc., etc. So this is, in my view, a new political era for Europeans, both for those who are members, for the European institutions as we know it today, and for the candidates to join the EU.
Thank you very much. A lot at EU's plate. Elżbieta, do you want to zoom in? Which areas would you focus for the EU to reform?
Both sides must prepare themselves. But as I said before, if we take I mean European society, because it is now very pro-enlargement, politicians, decision makers, if we take our words seriously, we must make this step to planning this. We cannot wait and repeat that we want an enlargement, because this is a window of opportunity now. All of us know that the Western Balkans has been waiting for 20 years in the corridor and nothing was happening. So of course the pace of the accession will be different because of the reason that Joachim said. But there must be a precise plan with timetable, with what has to be done on both sides. That's why, again, I'm waiting for this next week report with a concrete, even vague plan for how to do it, and then the decision of the European Council in December. What will be the next? Because okay, we can maybe we can even say 2030, as we've heard some times ago. It is a date, but this is the time when we need to prepare ourselves. As Joaquin said, there are two different things of preparation. First one are a sectoral policies, because definitely they will have to be adapted as it was previously. It was with our enlargement in 2004. There were adoption of the common agriculture policy, cohesion policy, budget, those things. I read, probably some of you as well, the very interesting CEPS paper on the costs of the enlargement, because we from time to time we hear that all of the 27 member states will become net payers, which is not true. It is not. Yes, I know.
The paper is on the CEPS website. The author is Michael Emerson. I don't see Michael, but he's in the room.
But he was here. Yes. I know. This is very interesting. That it is not not so difficult as sometimes is presented. But the other part of this discussion is governance in the EU. This is a mostly political discussion, but also partly technical. Do you want to have European Union that is unable to make any decision? So the governance, so the voting system. This is, I don't know whether with this or without this, the enlargement will happen. But this is a very special enlargement. This is enlargement based on our security. This is enlargement when we see the complete change of the position of the different member states of the enlargement, that those member states that for years were saying, no, we'll have to wait, no enlargement. Now they see that it's much more risky to have Ukraine and Moldova outside the EU than in the EU, in the bloc. So this is enlargement when the main topic is our security, to be secure Europe. By the way, every enlargement so far was a success story after years. It's visible, even with this big enlargement in 2004, with so much poorer member states or poorer countries. This is a success story. So on the other hand, again, on this economic part, if we want in this completely changing world, with the two superpowers now, I mean US and China, really fighting themselves, if we want to be a powerful player, we need to be bigger. We need to grow. There is no other choice but grow for Europe. And now, after almost a year of declaration that we finally want to enlarge and we want a bigger Europe, and we are inviting, and also some technical steps that were done. They were granted candidate status. So now is the time to make a plan. What we are going to do. In which, before enlargement in 2004, there was so-called Agenda 2000, with a precise impact assessment prepared by the Commission. What are the costs? What are the benefits? And this is something for what is time right now. So the two things. First one, rather technical, although everybody knows how even in such pro-European country as Poland, as we had, how harsh dispute we had on the grain. So common agriculture policy, cohesion policy, how much we lose for our security in the future. And on the other hand, political discussion on the governance in the EU. Again, the next technical discussion, how many commissioners? 35, commissioners, and discussing different issues. This is something that must be, those topics must be on the table, and time for it is now. If us as a European Union, and if Ukraine and Western Balkans lose this chance, this window of opportunities, as I call it, the door may close for a very long time.
Yep. This is very insightful. I think CEPS will be happy to continue delivering studies on it. We've already part of the Franco-German paper.
But
especially the ideas on the numbers of commissioners or to steer there.
One more thing, but especially it must be publicly said that this will be a cost, but not such a cost that we cannot afford it as a European Union. Having on this balance our security.
Cost and benefits. And before we open up for the questions from the audience, let me go back to Anita, because you've already mentioned one thing that was a tangible idea. What should be done? SEPA, Single European Payment Area, that joining it would be good. What other areas would you highlight? What needs to be done to use this economic foundation as the tool to foster the enlargement?
Yeah, strong economies are always a good foundation for peace and security, and to be invited to the big family like European Union. So the Western Balkans economies are approximately 100 billion in GDP spread over these 6 countries, of which half of it is Serbia, and then the other half is the other 5. So economically, maybe not such a big of a challenge than we talk here about the 6 governments that would join the European Union. And from this perspective, there might be a little bit more complexity in the region, not so much financially than probably from the political perspective. And strengthening the economic foundation there, strengthening the economical programs which are contributing to the inspiration what EU likes to have, let's say greening the economies I have mentioned before, digitalization of the region, bringing transparency into the business practices, well-being or welfare of the citizens, bringing them to the one banking system and so on, is always very, very encouraging. And also where the money goes and where the money should further continue to be invested is also connecting it through transport. There are also bigger ports down there in Albania, where goods are coming in from all over the world. There are roads which are not fully connected, and it's such a short distance to let's say Austria or Slovenia or Croatia, now being also in the EU already for 10 years. Also the road transportation, the digital platforms, these are all very important parts for a proper integration, and also to bring economies closer and to have higher economic value on investment. So when you invest in the West Balkans, you probably want a bit higher return because you say, okay, the region is not part of the EU yet, so we want higher returns. But when you stabilize the political part and you bring it cheaper, you make it cheaper because you connect it better. Connectivity and trust always makes things cheaper. And this trust value is important for politics and even more so for business. Yeah, investor will invest if he feels the trust that his money will be returned. And the trust comes, this was a good question, what can we do to build up this trust? And one of them is to do more business together, to interconnect even more. Also, there were talks about open Balkans, maybe you have heard about it, this is now not going forward, so because there's no trust. Yeah? If there would be trust, I think it would be open already. So trust, economic welfare, keep speeding up the process of the accession programs. As Elizabeth said, they were waiting 20 years in the corridor. Now it's time to speed it up, because even this honeymoon enthusiasm, let's go to the EU, might vanish if we don't see concrete commitment. This I'm talking now from inside out, yeah, from being in the region, talking every day to customers, to institutions. They also want to see progress. Otherwise, also this enthusiasm is a little bit vanishing here and there. This needs to be strong going forward, stronger every day. And since the war in Ukraine, of course, it's a security issue, but it's also now the timing issue. Yeah, will it happen now? Can we have this? Can we have this hope now very high? Are we part of this bloc 2030? I think these are the biggest questions in the region, not just for politicians, also for the businesses. Yeah, do I invest now? Will my investment in 2030 be part of the EU? If we do nearshoring, outsourcing, opening a new factory, is this something that will be part of the EU in 2030? These are the business questions, but it all goes with politics. So it's very much interlinked, and probably this is why we are invited here today a little bit from different perspectives to share our experience.
Thanks a lot. And with this, let me open the floor for the questions. Yeah, the first question, the last row, the gentleman.
Thank you. Alexander Lungarov, European Economic and Social Committee, currently on leave, and Institute for International Law, KU Leuven. Nearly all of the countries that are currently candidates or potential candidates for EU accession are involved in a conflict either of a territorial nature or a national identity linked issue, or both. And this is something which in most cases dates back quite a bit in the past, but we've seen flare-ups recently in the different areas. So what would be the panel's take on this? Thank you.
Another question here.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the interventions. My name is Jene Tucai. I am from the Council, and I also teach this subject in the College of Europe for 27 years. So it was interesting to learn a lot, especially from Mr. Almunia, about the history when Spain had joined the European Union. I have two questions. The first goes to Mr. Almunia. You mentioned trust, which was very important. My question, I fully agree with you, by the way. This is now a politically driven process. Strong political will needs behind it, which can only be based on trust in all contexts. My question is, concerning the Western Balkans, in the last decades, the most important was stability. Even the denomination of the agreements concluded with the Western Balkan countries and the European Union and its member states, except for Kosovo, was stabilization and association agreement, and that was not by accident. If somebody now knows the facts, in the Western Balkans, there is growing doubts about political stability. Look at what is going on in Serbia, for example. Look at what is going on between Serbia and Kosovo. But even within Bosnia and Herzegovina, with the so-called Srpska Republika. So how can you build up trust if there is no really trust between the candidate countries, for example, in the Western Balkans? That's the first question. The second question, I fully agree with you, the Ukraine is a special case. But now the political tendency is that everything is interlinked. So whether there could be a regatta enlargement, so with different groups based on merit, if finally Ukraine cannot be admitted for whatever political reasons, question mark. And what would be the impact of that scenario on the whole European project? Concerning Madame Biankowska, I fully agree with you. What I heard, and that was important for me, is the anti-corruption framework, what we really need. When Spain had joined the European Union...
Sorry to interrupt, but we have other questions. If you could
yeah.
on the questions, that would
Okay, the only question I wanted, the cost aspect you mentioned. We have these studies. What would be the cost estimate? It's 259 billion euro. It was stand in early this year. How and from what sources it would be financed from? Because the member states, EU27, even today, cannot agree on the MFF revision. Thank you.
Thanks. Questions, the gentleman and the lady.
Oh, thank you. I confine myself to the Balkans. What about the discussion on rule of law, democratic institution, anti-corruption? My experience, I had some experience when I was in the commission. There are still a lot of problems with that. Economic is very important, as you said. They are waiting. But what about the institution, and what about society? Are they prepared to enter in a democratic enceinte, even though we have some problem with Poland or Hungary? But generally speaking, we are all democratic and rule of law works. What about those countries? They are not prepared at all in this sense. Thank you.
Question next.
Hello, my name is Ayşe Yürekli. I want to ask, actually, also mention the elephant in the room, which is Turkey. Actually, Anita was mentioning a little bit about Western Balkans and Turkish banks operating in Kosovo and elsewhere. But aside from business, Turkey has been the oldest candidate country waiting in that long corridor even before the Western Balkans. And it's a very difficult case. It's actually also started negotiations, but as we know, it's a frozen process. But yesterday in Germany, the German Foreign Office has organized a large meeting, a very crucial meeting, a larger and stronger EU on the future of enlargement. And Mr. Hakan Fidan, the Foreign Minister of Turkey, was also invited there. And what is your take on the situation with Turkey? Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Okay, I think we can start responding. Shall we start by Joaquin? Yeah. How do we build the trust in the Western Balkans when they're in, not having trust between one another? We had also I don't know whether you would like to comment on the costs of joining the EU. Rule of law institutions, are the societies ready in the Western Balkans? What to do with the Turkey, and what to do with the conflicts? Can we admit the countries to the EU while they're still not resolved with their conflicts?
Okay, too many questions. For someone who is not at all an expert in the Western Balkans. But trust crosses through almost all the questions that have been put on the table. How to build this? Well, it's a political issue. But among the Western Balkans countries, trust between each one of them is needed. If not, we will not have the possibility for the group of countries of the Western Balkans to join the EU. The EU will not, under any price, in my view, internalize discussions about borders, discussions about the impossibility to share a public space, a public project, a common view of Europe, if there are identity splits that cannot share the same project. Every one of us have identities, national identities. In my own country, several national identities share the same project, but this is Europe. Europe is, as it was written in the project of the Constitutional Treaty, unity and diversity. Okay, this is only democracies can share these two elements. Unity, common project, common values, common principles, respect of common rules, and at the same time, respect for different identities. But to internalize these kind of tensions within the EU will not give way to an enlargement, or at least will give way only to partial enlargement of the countries involved in the present. Second point, well, it's true that in some countries waiting at the other side of the door, confidence about the positive aspects of joining the EU can vanish. And it's obvious that some of the Western Balkans countries, after 20 years, are not very happy with the behavior of the EU members, with the behavior of the EU institutions regarding enlargement. Few years ago, with another political cycle in the EU, the enlargement objective was more or less forgotten. And now, because of Ukraine, because of the situation that we need to protect our collective security in Europe, enlargement comes again to the fore for the whole Western Balkans countries, together with Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, and even Turkey. But the question of Turkey is a very particular one, not only because of the complexity of Turkey, but because, see, I remember in 2004 when I arrived to become member of the Commission, still under the Prodi Commission, Turkey was a candidate, was a real candidate. I remember my interviews with one of the closest cooperators with Erdogan, the minister then of finance minister and after foreign affairs minister. He was a real pro-European. But years after, he is no more close to Erdogan and the Turkish mood has not been very pro-European. So if a country does not want to become member of the EU, okay, it's not for us to go there to convince them. The demand to become member of the EU is a demand that has an origin in the country. In this enlargement, we have an interest, a common interest for Europeans, that is security. But we cannot substitute the national demand for becoming member of the EU. This is a responsibility mainly of the candidates, and our responsibility as EU is to make possible that this demand is effective one day if they fulfill the conditions, if the negotiations succeed, and we contribute to this success from our pre-accession instruments and so on and so forth. The kind of enlargement, I don't think this new process of enlargement cannot give way to all the members, all the candidates join the same day. I think it's not possible at all. And not only because of Ukraine, by the way. That is a very particular case indeed. Because other countries will not rush and will not advance towards full membership at the same pace. I cannot imagine this. And I think we need also to discuss, and this is this report, Franco-German report, put forward some ideas, but there will be many other ideas in the public debate, to imagine a different way to become member, a more gradual process to become full member of the EU. I think we need to think on these things. How will, and this will conclude my answers, how these ideas will come to the fore, in my view, cannot be a top-down approach. I don't think that the Commission document next week or the European Council in December will give way to a perfect plan to put order in the process of enlargement of these new member states in the coming years. I don't know if before, probably well after 2030 to complete the process. I think this should be a learning by doing process. So I will not at all recommend to start discussing now the reform of the treaties. We need to learn much more, not to repeat the mistakes of the convention in 2002, 2003. They rushed to prepare a new treaty before the enlargement in 2004, and they didn't succeed in establishing the right list, not only of priorities, but the problems created by the enlargement of the EU. And even they didn't succeed, unfortunately, in convince the public opinion in two founding members of the EU, France and the Netherlands, that put a brake on the adoption of the constitutional treaty. I think we need to learn of those mistakes, and we need to learn a lot about the real problems that we need to fix in the EU in parallel with the fixing of the problems of the candidate that is mainly their own responsibility with our support.
Thanks a lot. Maybe first,
Just sure. Add something that this must be a mixture of a merit-based process and the politics. This is a mixture of those two, because if it had been merit-based process, that we had few Balkan member states inside EU already, if it's not political decision that we are not enlarging for the last 10 years or last 15 years. So this must be a mixture, but definitely the things like administration, corruption, anti-corruption system are on the side of the aspirating states. This is not a role for the Commission. There are points to do for the European Union Commission, for the European Union, and there are points to list to do for the accessing member states. Commission announced the 6 billion growth pact plan for the Western Balkans. One of the points is good administration, anti-corruption system. This is the money just for this. And of course, we know that some of those countries, not all of them, but some of those countries are really affected, primarily, of course, ongoing war in Ukraine, but also the Serbia-Kosovo conflict, which is stopping all of the negotiations with Serbia until it's stopped, and it must be done there on the ground. There will be no accession of Serbia and no further discussion with Kosovo. But there are other countries like Montenegro, Albania, North Macedonia, except some Bulgarian issues. But this is also politics. Those three countries are ready to really to move forward definitely more quickly than the others. So this is, as I said, this is a mixture of merit-based process when all of the boxes must be ticked, all of the negotiation chapters must be concluded, including anti-corruption, good governance, good administration, but also politics. As we have heard for the last, I don't know, year or something, political will is there. The yesterday conference in Berlin, when foreign minister said that Germany could even agree not having commissioner for some period of time, this is a good political will. Very extended, but and we don't know how it will but those discussions are ongoing. But there is a lot of different discussion. There is a lot of different points of view with gradual, progressive accession, whatever.
Staged accession.
Staged accession, yes, with chapters concluded and then having a seat in the specific council. But there must be a roadmap. Whether we want it, the first question is whether we politically, as a European Union, want it or not. If we want it, and we are serious about it, we need a plan, and that's it.
Thanks a lot. The questions on the Western Balkans, are the societies in the Western Balkan countries ready to become the part of the European Union?
Again, more like from the ground perspective yes, I think that societies very much inspire. Even now, they are going to the EU as much as they can. They go for jobs, they go for education, because this is where they see themselves home. I think they would be even more happy if they would have same conditions staying where they were born and still be part of the EU economy, jobs, and everyday lifestyle. So definitely the short answer is yes. Especially Kosovo, I think they've really, for them it's the only way to go. And I hear a lot about ticking the boxes, being ready. You have to do the homework before we even talk about accession. Just an example of visa liberalization of Kosovo. They have ticked off the boxes, I don't know, back in 2018, and they are going in 2024. So there is also some delay, and this, let's say, a little bit disappointment also on delivery from the EU side. I know that the countries are not delivering on corruption programs and this and that, anti-corruption programs, I'm sorry. They are not delivering everything. They don't tick off all the boxes, but even there were cases when they did and it did not happen. And that's why I think there should be a political will on both sides and concrete action plan, like Elizabeth mentioned, concrete action plan on both sides, how we are moving forward, where are the concessions and where are the compromises. And certain things can be resolved only after the accession. Even the countries like Slovenia or Bulgaria or maybe even Poland, things have been improving after accession. You can't have it all ready and perfectly done and say, now you are perfect, now you can enter. Your exams are all 5+. Yeah? So this is the best grade when I grew up. Now I think it's 1+. This where you fail back in Slovenia. So certain things will be resolved only after you are accepted into the union. But of course, the homework has to be done. I think countries are trying, and trust comes with union. You have to have a common goal, common values, and then the trust comes. I don't know, even like just joining a NATO country and then your neighbor joins as well, and then suddenly you trust each other, and before you didn't. It happens the same in the EU. And it will happen the same in the West Balkans. It will happen the same with Ukraine. It will happen, you know, you need both ways. You need political way on both sides. And then it's good also for the business, and then you improve economies, then you improve the citizens' well-being, then they don't go desperately anymore to leave the country just to get a better pay. It's all connected, it's interconnected, it's top-down and it's bottom-up, and political win, trust, communication, collaboration, joint programs. These are all things that are moving the region forward and closer to the big EU family, which I understood from this panel that the future is only growth. Growth for the EU. And I think West Balkans are, on a citizen level, willing to join in. This I can say from a on-the-ground perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing with us. I'm just time aware. We may be running out of time very soon, but before I conclude, I just wanted to come to each of you very brief questions, like 1 minute answer. What would be one thing you would want to see next week in the reports of the European Commission?
Well, I will not want to see receipts for quick and definitive solutions. I would prefer to read in this document a good reflection, a good list of thoughts on how important and relevant is for the EU and for the candidate countries, but in particular for the EU to take it seriously, this enlargement, because this enlargement will define our common future as Europeans.
Thank you.
I would like to see a side of the reports of the on this 10 countries. I would like to see at least outline of the plan, what we are going to do as a European Union, and also yes, what we are going to do. Precise, or maybe less precise, but any plan. And last one thing, let's hope that with the new election in Serbia in December, situation will change, because otherwise there will be no progress until this dispute is concluded between Serbia and Kosovo. Those two countries are again stalled.
Anita?
I really hope for a good dialogue. This is also why we are here. We are really supporting the region to find a common dialogue, to get ready. And I would go back to the first comment where Mr. Joachim said, you have to come to Brussels to see how we operate, who we are, what's happening here. You have to come, you have to see, you have to learn. I would also invite the European Union to go into the region, see on the ground what is there, what's really there, this enthusiasm that is still there, and evaluate it from the in-ground perspective. It's not enough just the tourism experience, it's also spending some time around, meet people, your counterparts, and also outside the political circle, join some other events, because there is a lot of shared values and shared inspirations and goals that might not be seen on political scene, especially when we talk negotiations, Serbia, Kosovo, you see like, that this is far from everything. But when you talk either to Serbian colleagues or to Kosovo colleagues, I mean, we talk the same things here, EU, NATO, future, it's all one, yeah? And one more perspective, there seems to be a big disappointment that these 6 Western Balkan countries can't really work together, and there's no trust and so on. We have banks in most of these countries, and no matter where is the workshop, either in Belgrade or in Pristina or in Tirana or in Vienna, or we make it in Zagreb or Bucharest, wherever, we really work together. There is trust, there is collaboration, there is shared values, there is everything, because we are already feeling this corporate union. Yeah? We are like working under the brand of, let's say, Raiffeisen in that context, and there is a shared value. My colleagues are just going next week to Belgrade workshop. To work together to increase the businesses, the services. There is zero resistance to work together, to be together, to create together, to add economic value together. Not to mention Kosovo, Albania anyhow, or with Bosnian friends. There is a big trust and collaboration when you talk business, especially under the same union as Raiffeisen in this context. So I also believe that once this is, let's say, accepted to the EU, there will be increased collaboration, trust, common, and before that, they might not be so well, yeah? So something comes also after. So this needs to be put in context. The sum of the problems can be resolved only after you join the union.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Let's see what comes up next week in the reports of the European Commission. Let me take this opportunity actually to inform you that next week, exactly here in this room, on November 8th, on the date of the publication of the reports, we will host another event on enlargement, but this time we will discuss the report itself. We will have special guest, Nicu Popescu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Integration of Moldova, and Director General Koopman. So maybe see you next week so we can continue discussing